It was supposed to be a fresh start. When Daniel and Claire Morris moved into the quiet suburban home on Willow Creek Drive, it felt like a dream come true. After years of saving, they finally owned a house, a place to raise their daughter Emily, start over and forget the losses they'd endured. The neighbors were kind, the street was calm, and the price had been unbelievably low. But on their first night, Claire woke to Emily talking softly in her room, to someone unseen. By morning, tiny handprints covered the hallway walls, too small to belong to their child. When Daniel checked the baby monitor footage, what he saw wasn't their daughter at all. It was a pale figure sitting beside her, whispering, and from that moment on, their dream home became a trap they couldn't leave. The rain had already begun when Daniel and Claire Morris pulled into the cracked driveway of their new home. The gray two-story house loomed against a bruised sky, its white paint peeling in long, curling strips like dry skin. Emily sat quietly in the back seat, clutching her teddy bear as thunder rolled somewhere far away. Daniel killed the engine and looked at Claire with a tired smile. "Home, sweet home," he said, his voice pretending excitement he didn't feel. Claire smiled back, though her eyes betrayed the same unease. The real estate photos hadn't shown how isolated the place felt. The other houses on the street were distant, their windows dark, their yards overgrown. A single for sale sign tilted on its post a few houses down, swaying slowly in the wind. The realtor had already left the keys under the mat, texting that she'd catch up tomorrow. Daniel unlocked the door, and it opened with a slow, reluctant groan. A draft of cold, damp air spilled out, heavy with the scent of wood and age. Inside, the rooms were dim and echoing. Boxes lined the hallway. Every step they took sent a creak running up the floorboards. Claire rubbed her arms. "It feels colder in here than outside." "Old insulation," Daniel said, forcing a chuckle. Emily wandered toward the staircase, her small shoes squeaking against the wood. Halfway up, she stopped, staring toward the narrow attic door that sat near the ceiling. "Mommy," she whispered. "There's someone up there." Claire froze. Daniel set down the box in his hands. Honey, it's empty up there. Probably just the wind." But the little girl didn't move. Her eyes followed something unseen along the edge of the ceiling, and when she finally turned back to her parents, she smiled faintly. "He said he's glad we came back." That night, after hours of unpacking, the rain thickened into a steady downpour. The house groaned as if adjusting to its new occupants. Daniel sat on the couch scrolling through his phone, trying to ignore the faint scratching sounds coming from the hallway. Claire checked on Emily, who was already asleep, her teddy bear tucked under her arm. As Claire turned off the nightlight, she noticed a pattern of small dark handprints on the wall just above the baseboard. Too small to be Emily's and smeared in what looked like dust or soot. Downstairs, Daniel heard a sound, tap, 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 from the ceiling above him. He grabbed a flashlight and climbed the narrow ladder to the attic. The door resisted before finally creaking open. He swept the beam across the dusty space. Nothing but cobwebs, old nails, and silence. Then from behind him a whisper floated through the darkness. A child's voice, soft and breathless. "You finally came back." Daniel spun around. The flashlight flickered once and then went out. Below, Claire jolted awake as Emily began to cry in her sleep. Upstairs, the attic door slowly closed on its own, sealing the sound inside. And somewhere above them, something small moved, shifting across the floorboards, waiting. The next morning, sunlight poured through the cracked blinds, cutting pale lines across the living room floor. Claire tried to convince herself that last night had been nothing, exhaustion, nerves, or the stress of moving. But deep down, something in that house felt wrong. The silence had weight to it, pressing on her chest. Emily sat cross-legged on the rug, humming softly while drawing with crayons. Claire smiled faintly until she looked closer. Emily wasn't drawing the house or her parents. She was sketching a small boy with dark eyes standing in front of flames. Beside him, written in a child's uneven handwriting, "Michael." Claire knelt down. "Sweetheart, who's this?" Emily looked up, her voice cheerful. "My friend. He used to live here before the fire." A chill moved through the room. "What fire?" Claire asked carefully. Emily shrugged. "The one that took his mommy away." Before Claire could respond, the temperature in the room dipped sharply. The crayon snapped in Emily's hand. Claire looked around. Every window was closed, yet the curtains swayed like someone had walked past. Upstairs, Daniel was fixing a leaky pipe in the basement when he heard it. a faint tapping from behind the wall. He froze, flashlight trembling in his grip. The sound came again, rhythmic, deliberate. He banged the pipe with his wrench. "Damn rodents," he muttered, though it didn't sound like that. When he finally finished and came upstairs, he found Claire standing by the hallway mirror, pale. "What's wrong?" he asked. She handed him something she'd found. A photograph, old and water-stained, tucked behind the mirror's frame. It showed a woman and a young boy, both smiling. But someone had violently scratched out their faces with what looked like a knife. On the back, in faint pencil marks, was a single line. "We're still here." That night, the house came alive again. Claire couldn't sleep. The walls creaked, floorboards sighed, and somewhere above, something heavy shifted in the attic. She went to check on Emily and found her daughter sitting up in bed, whispering, "Emily." The little girl turned, eyes half open, voice trembling. "He doesn't like Daddy here." Claire's heart pounded. "Who doesn't?" "The boy in the walls." Before Claire could move, a soft thud echoed from behind the headboard, like a small hand pressing against the wall. She pulled Emily into her arms, holding her tightly. Downstairs, Daniel heard the same knock. It came 3 times from inside the walls of the living room. He turned toward the sound just as a toy car, Emily's, rolled slowly out of the dark hallway and stopped at his feet. The air turned freezing cold. Daniel whispered, "Who's there?" Silence. Then from the shadows, a child's voice, faint but clear, "You shouldn't have come." The light bulb flickered above him and went out, plunging the house into complete darkness. And somewhere between the walls, something small began to move and crawling closer, whispering his name. The storm returned 2 nights later. Heavy rain drummed on the roof while the wind moaned through the cracks of the old house. Daniel lay awake on the couch, unable to shake the sound of that child's voice echoing in his head. The house felt alive, listening. Upstairs, Claire tucked Emily in again. The little girl's face was pale, eyes heavy with exhaustion. "Mommy," she whispered, "Michael's scared." "He says the fire's coming back." Claire brushed her hair softly. "It's just a dream, baby." But when she kissed her forehead, Emily's skin felt ice cold. By midnight, the house was silent except for the rain. Daniel dozed off on the couch until a faint crackling woke him. It was subtle at first, like paper burning. Then came the unmistakable smell of smoke. He bolted upright. The living room lights flickered as he grabbed the flashlight and rushed up the stairs. A red-orange glow pulsed from under Emily's door. "Claire, Emily," he shouted, slamming the door open. But there was no fire, only shadows dancing across the walls. For a moment, the air shimmered and the room seemed to shift. Daniel stood frozen as the wallpaper peeled away before his eyes, revealing blackened wood. The curtains curled, glowing like embers. Through the haze, he saw her. A woman, her dress burned and torn, clutching a small boy who screamed her name. Flames surrounded them, the same room consumed in fire. "Help us," the woman cried, and then just as suddenly it was gone. The glow faded. The walls returned to normal. Daniel dropped to his knees, trembling, gasping for breath. Claire rushed in moments later. "What happened?" "I saw them," he whispered. "The fire. It happened here." She helped him to his feet, shaken but trying to stay calm. "Daniel, you're exhausted. You've been—" "No," he said sharply. "I saw them. A woman and a kid. They died here." Claire hesitated, her hand tightening on his arm. "I looked up the property records. There was a fire. 10 years ago. A mother and her son, they never made it out." A shudder ran through the house as thunder crashed outside. Emily's voice broke through the tension, calling from her bed. "Daddy?" They turned him and froze. Emily stood in the doorway, clutching her teddy bear, her eyes unfocused. Her voice was soft, distant. "Michael says the door was locked. He couldn't get out." Daniel knelt beside her, voice trembling. "What door, sweetheart?" "The one that won't open." A deep groan echoed from above. "The attic door." Daniel looked up toward the ceiling as dust drifted down. For a heartbeat, he could swear he saw smoke seeping through the cracks. Then came a faint sound, like a child sobbing, followed by a whisper that turned his blood to ice. "It's happening again." The lights flickered violently, plunging the house into half-darkness. Claire grabbed Emily, shouting Daniel's name. But he was already climbing the stairs toward the attic, toward the sound of something trapped between this world and the next. The air was thick, every step up the stairs groaning under Daniel's boots. The flashlight in his hand flickered weakly as he reached the top landing. Behind him, Claire's voice echoed faintly. "Daniel, don't go up there!" He didn't answer. Something in him, a mix of dread and determination, pushed him forward. The attic door stood before him, slightly open, as if inviting him in. Smoke seemed to seep from the cracks, though he could smell no fire. When he pushed it open, the light beam cut through clouds of dust. The attic was cluttered with old furniture draped in white sheets. In the center stood a wooden chest, blackened by burn marks. The smell of ash hung in the air. Daniel crouched and opened the chest slowly. Inside were fragments of a child's world. Melted toys, a small red car, and a half-burned teddy bear. Beneath it all lay a scorched locket. When he turned it over, he could barely read the engraving. "To my Michael. Love, Mom." A wave of grief hit him. Not his own, but something deeper, heavier. The air grew colder. The flashlight flickered again, then died. He was swallowed by darkness. Then from the far corner of the attic, a child's sob broke the silence. Daniel froze. A small figure stepped forward. A boy, no older than 6, his clothes burned, his face streaked with ash and tears. His eyes were dark, endless. Daniel's throat tightened. "Michael?" The boy stopped, trembling. His voice was barely a whisper. She didn't open the door. "I tried to save her." Daniel's heart pounded. He crouched lower, voice trembling. "It wasn't your fault, buddy. It wasn't your fault." The boy looked up, eyes glistening with pain. "She's still burning." Behind Daniel, the attic walls began to pulse orange. Flames flickered where there were none. The air turned hot and dry, the smell of smoke thick. Daniel could hear a woman crying, calling a name over and over. "Michael?" "Please," Daniel shouted into the heat. "You can stop now." "You don't have to stay here anymore." The attic roared. Every shadow came alive, swirling around him like smoke. The boy's figure trembled, fading in and out. The chest burst open, scattering the burned toys across the floor. Daniel gripped the locket in his hand. "You're not alone anymore," he said, voice breaking. "Go to her. She's waiting." The air stilled. The flames froze mid-dance, then dimmed, retreating into nothing. For the first time, Daniel saw peace cross the boy's face. "Thank you," Michael whispered, and vanished. The attic fell silent. Daniel dropped to his knees, gasping for breath. The locket glowed faintly in his hand. Downstairs, Claire screamed his name and rushed up. She found him unconscious on the floor, smoke rising from the wood around him, yet no sign of fire. She knelt beside him, shaking. When his eyes fluttered open, he whispered one word before fading out again. "He's free." Daniel woke up 2 days later in a hospital room. The air was cold, sterile, too clean for comfort. Claire sat beside him, holding his hand tightly, her eyes red from crying. "You're okay," she whispered, voice trembling. "The firefighters found you passed out in the attic. They said there was no fire, but the wood was burning hot where you lay." Daniel blinked slowly. His throat felt dry. "Michael," he rasped. "The boy—" Claire hesitated, then looked down. "There was a locket in your hand, the one from the attic. When they tried to take it, it burned through their gloves." Daniel's eyes widened. "He's gone, Claire." He finally crossed over. For a moment, silence filled the room. The heart monitor beeped steadily, matching the quiet rhythm of his breathing. Claire's tears fell onto his wrist. Then maybe the house is finally at peace too. A week later, they returned to the house to collect their things. The moving truck waited outside, its engine humming softly. They decided to sell. Some places, they agreed, just weren't meant to be lived in. As Daniel stepped inside one last time, a strange calm filled him. The scent of smoke was gone. The creaking had stopped. The air was still. Too still. He walked through the hallways, his footsteps echoing faintly. Sunlight filtered through the windows, landing softly on the old wallpaper. The house didn't feel hostile anymore, as it felt empty. In the living room, where the family photo had fallen before, he noticed something new on the mantel. A small red toy car, cleaned, shiny, perfectly placed. Daniel froze. He hadn't left it there. For a long moment, he simply stared. Then a faint warmth brushed across his shoulder, like a child's hand. He didn't flinch this time. Instead, he whispered, "You're home now, Michael." The lights flickered once, softly, almost like a nod. He smiled through the ache in his chest and turned toward the door. As he stepped outside, Claire called from the porch. "Ready?" "Irsa," he said, looking back one last time. "We're ready." They drove off down the winding road, the old house shrinking in the rearview mirror. For the first time, it didn't look menacing. The sunlight hit it just right, making the windows glow like warm amber. But just as they turned the corner, Claire glanced back and frowned. "Did you see that?" Daniel looked. In the upstairs window, the attic, a small silhouette stood watching them leave. A boy's figure, faint, peaceful, and still. Daniel didn't say a word. He just smiled faintly and squeezed Claire's hand. That night, miles away in their new apartment, Daniel woke suddenly to a soft sound. The faint click-click of a toy car rolling across the floor. He turned on the lamp. Nothing was there. Just shadows, silence, and the echo of peace. He lay back down, whispering into the dark. "Rest easy, kid." And somewhere far away, the sound of a child's laughter faded into the night.